and published in the mainstream journal, is the person that did that would have their, it would be thrust into the glare of the star-maker machinery of our culture. They'd be out on the center stage with all the spotlight shining on them. They'd be invited, they'd be inundated with invitations to go to the media and talk about their work. And as they went out onto the center stage, what they bring with them is the idea. They'd extend it out into the public eye. Now, maybe you don't like sex. Let me rephrase it. Maybe you don't like the idea of research on sex. Okay. Here's something else I've thought of. I work with parents. I've worked with thousands of parents in my career. And one of the most common complaints I hear from parents is the differential response their children show to the methods that parents use for discipline. And one very common method of discipline used in this culture is what's called ignoring. We might call that extinction. And parents notice that there's a differential response, a differential amount of resistance to extinction when used by one or the other parent. And in an attempt to understand the difference, the parents often commit the fundamental attribution error with each other. So the reason Dad doesn't get much resistance to extinction when he ignores the kids is because he's mean, or he's too strict, or he's authoritarian, or he's cruel. The reason Mom gets a lot of resistance to extinction when she uses ignoring is because she's weak and spineless, and she's too nice, she's too soft. And as you may well imagine, these attributions don't add to the quality of the marriage. Now, we could probably do better using Tony's work to understand that situation. It's very possible that Mom signals the availability of reinforcement much more so when she's using ignoring than Dad does. And from that perspective, we not only have a situation that doesn't have the characterological reference in it, so it's easier to accept, we also have a situation that we can correct fairly easily. That's what can be done with the idea. I've done a little work with, in the mainstream. I work with common behavior problems, and one very common behavior problem is resistance to bedtime. And 40% of children will, at one time or another, will present in primary care pediatrics with the complaint of resistance to bedtime. And the best known, best effective treatment, not best known, but the most effective treatment for that problem is escape extinction. But there's a problem with that, and that is nobody will use it. Why? Because they can't take the extinction burst. So what we've done is we've integrated what's called a bedtime pass with escape extinction. Here's how it works. The children go to bed, the child goes to bed, we give them the pass. And they can use the pass to have one request satisfied by a parent. They can summon their parent like a servant, or they can go and find them like a nomad. And they make the request. The parent satisfies the request, they surrender the pass back to escape extinction, and voila, what happens? No crying out, no coming out, no calling out from the bedroom. No extinction burst. Why not? I don't know, I'm not a scientist. But I consulted with one, Wayne Fisher, a scientist I admire, who's contributed significantly to my thinking, who has burnished and polished and improved the idea for us all. And he's done some work in this area. He, along with, I guess, Lynn Powell and some others, have shown that if you integrate a reinforceable option with escape extinction, you don't get an extinction burst. Why? Because the organism has an option, doesn't need the burst. Another thing we see is that often when we use the bedtime pass, kids don't use the pass. You look at the top panel there, you see old Tommy, he only used the bedtime pass twice. Why? I don't know, but it's just possible that old Tommy was laying in bed thinking, man, I sure hate to have the boogeyman come, not have my pass. Or they treat it like a transitional object. And developmental research has shown that transitional objects actually reduce physiological arousal, and the reduction of physiological arousal while in bed usually leads to sleep and improves sleep induction. Maybe they're just sleeping. But the point I want to make about these data is not what I just said. The point I want to make is about what happened after we published the data. Because we published in the Archives of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine. And the editor of the journal published an editorial right alongside the paper that said, perhaps you're wondering why I published a paper with only 2 subjects on such an ordinary problem. And she said, that's why I published the paper. Because it's such an ordinary problem, because it has an intervention that appears to work, and because it's one that parents appear to like. And what followed next was, I was invited to New York City by the American Medical Association to a press conference with more than 120 reporters from every form of media. And I was introduced to the press by the Surgeon brought the bedtime pass to the press. That night, we were on the NBC Evening News demonstrating how the bedtime pass works for America. Why all the hoopla for something so simple? Main Street, baby? That's Main Street. This is the kind of problem that parents everywhere have to face frequently, and solutions are scarce, and you start working in that area right where people live, and the idea propagates further and wider. Do more indirect contingency analyses of complex human behavior.